that Pope Leo is faced with potential schism on the left and potential schism on the right. And his job as Pope is to stop, insofar as he can, is to stop schism happening. And I think, given the tensions in the church, that's going to be an extraordinarily difficult thing to do.
From what I've heard, that the Pope met with Courage International, that meets with people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and their goal is to live chaste lives.
One of the reasons why people may not have heard about it is that because of recent legislation, this group is almost illegal.
The very fact that Pope Leo accepted this group, as I said, no pope has ever met with this group. They've been around since 1980, but accepted them there, had a photo op, had them sit down at the Vatican, I think is really extraordinary.
Another reason for my writing about Pope Leo meeting this group was to show that Pope Leo isn't Pope Francis II.
You know, the left always has to believe, well, he's really a leftist and he'll reveal that at any moment. The conservatives believe, well, he's really conservative and he'll reveal that at any moment. But
I think all people from the south of Italy see the Lutherans as somber, even when they're singing and dancing. It's just a comparative thing. He's actually he's a superstar.
I don't know if you know, but they just released some of his travel plans for 2026, and I saw that next month he's coming to London. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't. Tell me. Is that true?
No, it's not. I'm just trying to... No, Hello, everybody. This is Justin from Reclaiming Christendom with my highly, highly esteemed colleague.
Yes, this is Gavin Ashenden from Reclaiming Christendom with his highly, highly esteemed colleague.
Excellent. Well, I see there's been a lot of action over at the Vatican these days with the Pope, Gavin. What have you heard?
Let me set the context first, if I can. I think that one can't underestimate the amount of post-traumatic stress disorder that many of us have been left with after the last few years with Pope Francis. God bless him, God help him. But it means that partly because the civil wars that are taking place in secular society have moved into the Catholic Church, and we're fighting again the same kind of axis between the ambitions of utopian progressivism on the one hand and the traditional faith on the other. People are very edgy about what kind of Pope we have in Pope Leo. And I think that's understandable. However, there's a whole commentariat that are watching him for every single sign of being walking in Pope Francis's shoes. And I think if you're going to do that, then you should at least be even-handed. And therefore, although there have been events which cause people anxiety, like certain appointments, there have also been photo opportunities which people have complained about, particularly Father James Martin. So when there's a photo opportunity of a conservative or traditional kind, I think it's only fair for the commentariat to say, look at this, we'll make something of this. And there's been one of those this week.
Yes, so from what I've heard, that the Pope met with Courage International. I had not heard of this group, but it supposedly is a Catholic apostolate that meets with people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and their goal is to live chaste lives. I looked a bit into the organization. It's been around since 1980. It's recognized by the Vatican, and no pope has ever met with this group. It's not a small group. It's in, I believe it's in over 20 countries, has over 160 chapters. So it's a pretty major group, and it's a controversial group, certainly to people on the left, because this is not what they want to see. The liberals and the leftists is not what they want to see the Pope meeting with. But apparently they came to the Vatican, had a sit down, had pictures taken, and spent some time with the Pope. What have you heard on it?
One of the reasons why people may not have heard about it is that because of recent legislation, this group is almost illegal, in the sense that the left is working very hard to make sure that something called conversion therapy can't take place. This is again an abuse in language, because Christians depend upon conversion therapy. To become a Christian requires conversion, and it's therapeutic. So the very act of being baptized or being received into the church is an act of conversion therapy. But the left have ensured, certainly in the UK, that if you help anybody deal with their same-sex orientated feelings, this is a criminal offense. Of course, this is ludicrous, because if you talk about heterosexual feelings and you were to try and interfere with those, the left aren't remotely interested. They're only interested if you try and stop people. Not stop, that's the wrong word. You try and allow people to process why it is that they have same-sex attractions. And the psychology doesn't help us very much. It tells us that we know that you're not born gay, but there are a dozen reasons why people might develop same-sex attraction feelings. What courage does is to find an environment where people who are Christian, who find themselves with same-sex attraction, have the opportunity to be supported in living chaste lives. I first encountered someone doing this in 1977 when I was at an Anglican theological college, our equivalent to seminary. There was a very nice man called Martin Hallett. And unusually, Martin was very happy to tell the rest of us that he was gay. I thought, well, this is not normal in 1977 in Anglican circles. And he said that he was starting an organization called True Freedom, which would help other people who are gay manage their sexual continence. What I didn't realize was that I was meeting something of a prophet. I was meeting an extraordinary brave man who would start something in Anglican terms that would infuriate the left and infuriate the progressives, because what it suggests is that you're not a victim of your sexual feelings or your sexual attractions. You can, particularly with the help of God, exercise continence. Courage looks as though it started a few years later in Catholic circles, but it's been going, as you say, since 1980. And I think the most important part of this is that they asked to see Pope Leo. Pope Leo gave them an audience, he gave them a photo opportunity, and they gave them his blessing. And therefore, this seems to me to be worthy of comment and encouragement, particularly in an atmosphere of anxiety about what line he's going to pursue in terms of Catholic ethics.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that he actually met with two groups. The other one is Encourage, which is also, I saw over 100 chapters around the world, which meets with families of LGBTQ people and helps them how to deal and handle the situation. That's not always easy for families. People kind of take that for granted, but that's another group that was born of the first one, Courage, and is expanding rapidly. And the very fact that Pope Leo accepted this group. As I said, no pope has ever met with this group. They've been around since 1980, but accepted them there, had the photo op, had them sit down at the Vatican, I think is really extraordinary. With both sides battling over, is this Pope, liberal? Is this Pope conservative? This is quite a moment, I think.
I think we should also say, I believe it is quite a moment, and the fact that he agreed to see them is important. But we should also say that, particularly in the earlier months, many of these photo ops may very well be organized by his administrators. I think the fact that Father James Martin was there very early on was a sign of the way in which the left are able to manipulate the system for maximum propaganda effect. And as it happened, at the very time that the Pope saw Courage, and I'm sure I'm just going to contradict myself now and say that whilst in the early months, I'm sure that he was driven by his administrators, for a decision to welcome these people, I'm sure there must be some personal input. Whilst he was meeting them, Father James Martin was on an American chat show as a host. The host was an Englishman. His name, I've forgotten, but you remember his name. It begins with C, I think. It doesn't matter. Essentially promoting the fact that, promoting the view that Pope Leo was as supportive of his ministry as Pope Francis was. And I don't think this is true. And another reason for my writing about Pope Leo meeting this group was to show that Pope Leo isn't Pope Francis II.
Yeah, I think what people have a hard time getting over is that Pope Leo is, from all things that I've seen, is a centrist. And I've noticed that people have trouble believing that. The left always has to believe, well, he's really a leftist and he'll reveal that at any moment. The conservatives believe, well, he's really conservative and he'll reveal that at any moment. But it seems to me, from what I've seen, that this Pope has been doing a great job, and at heart he's a centrist. I mean, I remember when he first came out, there were signs that he was not as liberal, or let's say as leftist as the last pope. I mean, he came out with traditional attire. He said that he will be summering at Castle Gandolfo.
Yes.
Which he did. He's residing, unlike the previous pope, he's residing at the Apostolic Palace. He has the tradition of kissing the ring, the Pope tradition, the papal tradition of that. So he has the basic signs of respect for the history of the papacy, respect for history of that. And from what I've seen, he's done a rather remarkable job of really being hard to place in that sense, of being really even-handed. And I've been quite impressed so far.
I think earlier on you said that the Conservatives thought that he might be conservative. I don't think that's true, if that's what you said. I think actually many of the Conservative commentators are terrified that he's going to become like Pope Francis II. And I don't think they give him credit for being exactly what you've described, which is a centrist. It seems to me that all the indication is that he wants to be a pope to the whole Catholic Church. And to do that, he's going to take, as you say, a situation that embraces everybody. That doesn't mean he's going to give his views to all different parties, but he's not going to become partisan. And so I think one of the reasons why I think that's exactly the right kind of approach. And because the danger of being partisan is that you simply repeat, although it might be in the interest of truth, you exacerbate the potential of civil war or civil disobedience or passive aggression amongst people who don't agree with you. And I think he's trying to win the hearts and minds of the whole church. And I hope he succeeds.
Yeah, I don't think it's an easy task he has. I mean, if you even look at the Tridentine Mass and the Novus Ordo, I remember people were really looking out for that as one of the signs. What is he going to do with the, as we say, the Latin Mass? What is he going to do with that? And I do recall early in his papacy, he gave permission for Cardinal Burke to celebrate the Tridentine Mass at the Vatican. There were thousands that showed up, and some people were, surprised at this. But then at the same time, it looks like he hasn't quite relaxed much that the previous pope brought in. So he seems to have this remarkable ability of towing the line, keeping both sides a little bit happy. And again, that's not easy, but I saw that again with the Mass. And even now, people are wondering, will things relax with the traditional Latin Mass, or is it going to be restricted as with the last Pope?
Well, there come moments when there are crossroads, and I think we've reached one of those moments. Everyone is very anxious, understandably in this case, because of the SSPX, and we have good news and bad news. The good news is he's going to negotiate with them for a future. The bad news is he sent Cardinal Fernandez. More bad news, Cardinal Fernandez doesn't like the stance that the SSPX made itself distinctly different from, because it was on the basis of preserving Catholic ethics. But the next piece of good news is Cardinal Fernandez may be sent simply because he's the right person in the right dicastery. It's his job to deal with the SSPX over this. So I'm very much hoping that the Pope will have given Cardinal Fernandez a brief to say you must do everything you can to negotiate an agreement so that SSPX doesn't find itself in any kind of schism. If this goes wrong, the danger is that there will be there will be schism in the Catholic Church. The traditionalists, the Lefebvrist movement will grow and harden. So there comes a point where you can't please all the people or carry all the people with you. This crossroads, I think, is going to be very distinctive. I was hoping that during the summer there would be a second conclave for the cardinals. They would have had a chance to become better informed about what's been going on, and that there would be a mind emerging from the cardinals that there should be greater hospitality to the Latin Mass. But one of the things you keep on hearing is that the liberals are determined to see the Latin Mass as a vote of no confidence in the Council. I think that's ideologically a very serious mistake to make, but it's one they're committed to in good or bad, in good faith or ignorance. And that's part of the problem. Both sides are intransigent. And in this particular case, my own sympathies are entirely with the traditionalists. I think the liberals treating it as a vote of confidence in the Council are quite wrong. It isn't anything of the kind. And anyway, the Council is a more enigmatic thing than they would have it be. And at the same time, there is a progressive movement to try and so evolve the Catholic faith since the Council that it begins to stretch it from its roots too far. And so that seems to be at stake in terms of whether the Pope allows Traditionis Custodes to be lifted and for there to be a more generous settlement for the Mass of the Ages.
Yeah, and I think that since you're discussing major events that really are difficult for the Pope to toe the line, I think what we have also is that with the synodal way, I think that actually in Germany, the synodal way ended in 2023, but now they have the synodal council, and the synodal council is going on. And from what I've heard about the synodal council, this could lead to a schism of the church in Germany, because everyone kind of forgot about the synodal way a little bit after 2023. They had their ideas, women deacons, choice on celibacy. But now it sounds like this council is meeting and they're going to decide whether to actually enact these things. And if this goes forward, the synodal council, I mean, the only way I see that is as a schism. I can't see any other way to interpret if these things are actually taken into action. So I think Pope Leo has a big thing coming up in his hands with this synodal council. I don't know how to interpret it any other way. Is if the German church decides to just change the rules and diverge, for me, that's a clear schism. But I wanted to see your take on that.
Well, the Germans have done it once before, of course, under Luther in 1518. So they have form for it 500 years ago. I think you're right. I think what we then find is that Pope Leo is faced with potential schism on the left and potential schism on the right. And his job as Pope is to stop, insofar as he can, is to stop schism happening. And I think given the tensions in the church, that's going to be an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why, from the right, from my perspective, he's been going very slowly and very delicately, because he has to try and keep both wings of the church faithful to the See of Peter. And that's going to be very hard.
Yeah, I mean, he also has to deal with fiducia supplicans. That's a very sensitive issue. I believe that happened in 2023. That's, for everybody out there, that's the blessing of same-sex couples. And they've really questioned him since day one of his papacy about this. From what I have understood, he has slightly distanced himself from this. He said, if there is a blessing, the blessing is for individuals, not for couples. But at the same time, he's repeatedly emphasized that marriage is only between a man and woman. I've seen him say that in the press multiple times, which again, with this issue, it seems to be another hotbed issue, and it seems to be another one where both sides are wondering what's going to happen.
I think he's drawn the line in the sand several times. You're quite right. In his interview with Crooks early on in his papacy, he made it very clear that marriage was a foundation. Marriage between men and women was a foundational part of Catholic spirituality and theology, part of revelation, non-negotiable. One of the interesting things he did in terms of fiducia supplicans was point out to me in a conversation I had with an Italian Franciscan who works in England, Father Serafino Lanzetta. And he pointed out that when the Pope had the DDF, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith, for a kind of congratulatory tea party, where he said, well done on your work, and thank you for working so hard for the Vatican and for the Church and for me, and congratulations. He made the usual kind of remarks that you make when you're trying to pat your employees on the head. But he brought in a very interesting distinction. He said, well done for your work in the last 2 years. Now, to some extent, this disappointed people like Father Serafino, who were upset about the paper on Our Lady, the minimalist paper, which was Mater Populis Fidelis, because it didn't give Our Lady enough credit, and particularly didn't help move her towards the title that many of us think she deserves, because it's theologically and etymologically accurate co-redemptrix. But what he did was he said, congratulations on your work for the last 2 years. Now, Fiducia Supplicans was 3 years ago. And so this appears to be unambiguously excluding Fiducia Supplicans from what was anyway going to be a rather formal, well, thank you for your work. The difference between the two papers is Mater Populis Fidelis is something that needs, that it involves a change of emphasis. But Fiducia Supplicans was presented as right on the edge of heterodoxy. Yes, it wasn't a formal blessing of gay couples. It was a blessing of two people who came together as individuals, but in the context of being a couple. And so both sides could play it either way. It was a masterpiece in one sense of Franciscan ambiguity. Pope Francis intended it that way. Cardinal Fernandez wrote it that way. It was ambiguous, and Pope Leo seems to me to have deliberately left it off the list of things that he could congratulate the DDF over. So I'm fairly sure that on this matter, he simply is a pope. He upholds the teaching of the Catholic Church. What we have to hope is that he's able to allow the Mass of the Ages to be celebrated by detaching it from any sense that is a protest against the Second Vatican Council.
Another thing I saw in the news with the Pope this week that surprised me was his choice for the preacher for the pre-Lenten retreats. There's I looked him up, Bishop Erik Varden, a Norwegian, actually grew up with a Lutheran background, from a Lutheran household. I think it was non-practicing, but he's actually a best-selling author. He's got a lot of books on Amazon, spirituality books, a little bit of a somber style from what I've seen with his books, a lot of serious, somber topics, but not your typical preacher for that type of event. But I thought, researching Erik Varden, I thought he was an impressive choice, and it looks like something out of the box.
I think all people from the south of Italy see the Lutherans as somber, even when they're singing and dancing. It's just a comparative thing. He's actually he's a superstar. He's a superstar because he's a convert. He's a former Lutheran, maybe non-practicing, but nonetheless, he became a Catholic by conviction. He's a monk. He's an intellectual. He's one of the very few people who managed to combine together a sensitive, profound spirituality with a seriously well-formed intelligence. And he's completely and thoroughly orthodox. And as you read his books and you read his papers and listen to what he said, he's an inspirational character who is a source of renewal within the Catholic Church. Because he's so well known, because he's so popular, because he's so well regarded in conservative circles, for Pope Leo to choose him as his kind of mascot for Lenten renewal is a huge thing. And the reason it's huge is that Pope Francis also had his mascots for Lenten renewal, but they were the renewal of ambiguity. Almost all of them came with a kind of like a cigarette packet with a health warning on them. And this man could be bad for your faith. And Pope Francis kept on choosing people who wanted to introduce a degree of instability into the faith as part of the questioning something was entirely inappropriate for Lent. So the fact that he's chosen such a superstar, such a delightful, competent man, again, is a sign from Leo, I think, that he intends to be a Catholic Pope, to get rid of the ambiguity, to keep the faith as it was handed on down to him. And I think we have to make a distinction between theology and politics. Many of the things that he's associated with are either political or else they're part of the system working its way through. He doesn't micromanage. It's not the Pope's job to micromanage the Vatican. Not all appointments are the Pope's. I mean, for example, about a month ago, there was an ecumenical group, an interfaith group appointed, and it had several very liberal theological ladies on it. And a lot was made of the fact that, again, that this must have the Pope's hand on it. I'm as certain as I can be, this kind of middle-ranking committee nomination stuff is exactly what you'd expect the machinery of government to produce. The civil service that runs the place, that has favored people. It works in every organization like that, and in every church. So I think we should see the choice of Erik Varden as being a real plus for Pope Leo's reputation as somebody who cares about the faith as it's been handed on to him.
Yeah, I agree. Everything I've seen, although, like I said, a bit of a surprising choice, it seems like he is quite the superstar. I'm looking forward to hearing some of this, what he has to say. It's funny, but I've noticed the big thing they like to bring up about this Pope is that people will say, well, he's lax on immigration, or he doesn't care about immigration. And actually, if you look at what Pope Leo said, it's very reasonable. What Pope Leo said is countries should have borders. Countries have the right to decide who comes in and who does not. And what he said is, but the people inside you have to treat with dignity and with care. And that, of course, is taken by one side or the other to be extreme. But I have a hard time disagreeing with anything he said there. He's giving the rights for the countries to have a border, to determine who comes in, and he wants the people inside already to be dealt with, in a proper fashion. And that's been his stance on immigration. But of course, one side has tried to blow it up. More of the left side has tried to blow it up as he doesn't care. He's for open borders.
You're not wrong, but I don't share your interpretation. I suspect he's something of a Democrat as an American. I think one of his brothers said that, I would hate you to build up a picture of my own character through anything that one of my four sisters might want to say to the public media. I would say, no, please don't trust my siblings for a proper analysis of my own political views. And one of his brothers suggested that he was more Democrat than we'd assumed. But when it comes to political statements, I don't really care what the Pope thinks politically. I don't think he should express his political views, and I'd rather he didn't. However, there's an area of difficulty where you talk about human dignity, and of course he's perfectly entitled at that point to talk about the need to treat all human beings with dignity. It's a very delicate balance how you do that without becoming political. I thought he made a mistake when he was doorstepped earlier on, and I've noticed that he stopped doing it. He stopped giving off-the-cuff interviews about American political scene, and strikes me he learned his lesson very quickly. So I don't mind his politics, but I don't really want to know about it.
Well, considering that, I don't know if you know, but they just released some of his travel plans for 2026, and I saw that next month he's coming to London. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't. Tell me. Is that true?
No, it's not. I'm just trying to... No, it sounds like...
I feel less stupid.
Okay, it sounds like he's heading to... they gave some general plans. I know he's planning to go to Peru at the end of the year. I believe he's visiting some countries in Africa. They're weighing which countries to go. Of course, here in America, they're wondering when he's coming over to his home country. So that's a big question. But everyone seems very excited to have him here. I have to say, since this Pope has come in, I felt a lot of energy again in the church. He's a very intelligent man. His undergraduate degree is in mathematics, and then he has a degree in divinity, canon law. But I think it's that mathematics degree that keeps him very analytical and even-handed, and you can kind of see that in his personality.
Father Serafino, who has friends in the Vatican, said that he was being described as a mean chess player. He has exactly the kind of mind you described, and he's thinking several games ahead and several moves ahead. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's not taking the moves that, from a more partisan point of view, you'd like him to do. You'd like him to be on our team, to do the things to defend our team. In fact, he's not doing that. I think is a sign that he's working strategically and carefully and in for the long game in order to keep the whole church together.
Yes, and speaking of that, I will say that next week we are going to have our show. I'll be in contact with you. As you know, my dear friend Gavin and I will be over at the Vatican. So we will have our next episode, hopefully live from the Vatican, or we'll get some footage from there. And we look forward to meeting with some people over in the Vatican and seeing exactly what's going on there firsthand. So next week we have to connect with that.
That's very exciting, and congratulations on the trip. And I've no doubt you'll meet some very interesting people. And if, of course, if you see our Holy Father in God and you want to invite him to be on our platform, well, we welcome anybody.
Yes, I'll tell him. You know what? We'll take you. Don't worry about it. We don't care what.
We're all for inclusion when it comes to that.
Yes, we're all for it. So I look forward to that next week, and we have some excellent topics coming up. So good to see you, old friend, and see you soon.
Safe traveling. God bless you.
God bless.